Hello and welcome, this is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to create some embossed and waxed pipework cards. I'm using this pipework embossing folder from Lisa Horton Crafts, as well as many colors of her wax. So I'm going to emboss the backgrounds, and I'm going to use these waxes to go over top of that embossed background. Now these are new to me. She just sent them to me, so I'm going to open them up and I'm going to swatch each one of them, and I'm going to swatch them on both a black piece of cardstock as well as a white piece of cardstock, just to see how they look and the difference between those two backgrounds. So we have a tin here, it screws open, and look at that gorgeous wax. This one is ice white gold, and it just looks like a gorgeous champagne color. So when we go on the black, you can see that it is a gold color on the black cardstock. I wanted to compare it with the gold wax just to see what the difference between the two is, but I decided to grab a piece of white cardstock and get that one on the white before putting it to the side. And you can see how different it looks on white than it does on black. On white, it's more of like a transparent, opaly, champagne-y color. It's absolutely gorgeous. Next, we're going to go in with the black and going to do a little bit of each one of them on the two different surfaces. Now, when you're using these with your fingers, the heat from your fingers kind of melts the wax a little bit, and it kind of melts it into the cardstock. It's always best to have a lighter hand when you're working on your pieces than having a heavier hand. So when it comes to swatching, I'm not as careful about it just because I'm more interested in seeing the different colors. But when it comes to working on your background, you definitely want to make sure to be lighter handed. You can always add more wax, but if you get too much on there, you can't take it away. So next we have the copper, and I absolutely love the look of this one as well. And then we go into some different colors here. Now I'll have all of the colors in my supply list, and I'm also going to use all of the colors on my pipework cards. I'm going to concentrate a little bit heavier on the gold, silver, and copper, and then I'm just going to add touches of the colors just because I think they'd be fun and different for them. This green one there was peppermint green, and then we have teal. I absolutely love that teal color. It's absolutely gorgeous. It almost looks like an ice blue once you put it on the black cardstock, but when you put it on the white, it has a little bit more of the tealy properties to it. So it's really interesting to put them on those two backgrounds and just see the differences as well as the similarities. After the teal color here, we have marine blue. Look how gorgeous, how rich a blue that is. These are really, really easy to put onto the cardstock. And I do have a damp piece or a damp microfiber cloth that I have to the side to clean off my fingers each time. I don't want to contaminate the colors. It's not really going to contaminate the wax, but when I'm doing the swatches, I want to make sure to have a good indication of what the actual color is in the tin. This one here is rich purple, and it's a nice, again, rich purple. Perfect for that name. And then the last one we have is pink peony. It is a gorgeous pink color as well. And I really love the differences between the two of them on the dark as well as the light cardstock. So you can really have fun with the different colors when you're doing your cards and when you're creating with them. All right, so now that we're done swatching, let's start creating our cards. So I'm going to use the same pipework embossing folder for all three of my cards. The only difference really is going to be the cardstock that I have as my background. So I'm going to do one with a white cardstock background, one using Kraft mixed media Heavystock, and then one using black watercolor cardstock. So I will have three different backgrounds, and then you can see how the waxes look. I mean, you can see how they look on the swatches, but we'll see them on an embossed background with different colors. And I just thought it would be interesting to do because I wanted to see which one I would like better. To be honest, I kind of thought I was going to like the white background better, but in the end, I'm not so sure. So as I'm creating, if you like one background better than the other, put it in the comments because I'm really interested in what your opinion is, if you have the same preference as I do, or if you're liking a different one than I do. So I'm using the same colors and I'm using them in the same areas on the background. I figured might as well keep as many similarities as possible and just change up the background color. So I'm starting with the ice white gold. And again, I'm going to do all three backgrounds at the same time. Might as well have that same color on my fingers and do that background, or do all three of the backgrounds at once rather than repeating the same process. So I'm going to go over different areas of this background, and I did find out fairly quickly that it is best to have a light hand with this and be very, very light. You can always add more ink, but it's very hard, or you can't take away if you have any excess ink. So this one here is the gold color, and you do have to be very careful because if you press a little bit too hard, you're going to get that ink or that wax on your background. So I definitely get some wax on my background. It's one of those things that you only really notice it when you tilt it into the light. As I'm creating, you don't notice it quite as much, but that's where the being light-handed comes in handy. If you're light-handed, you're going to get a little bit less on your background, and you'll just have better control over it. By being light-handed, you tend to go just a little bit slower, which helps with that control. So the next color I'm going in with is silver here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the metallic colors, the ice white gold, the silver, and the copper to do most of the pipes. So most of that background is going to be done. And then when it comes to the colors, I'm just going to put little hints of the color here and there. Again, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. I did think the peppermint green one could be used strategically and almost make it look like rusty copper pipes. But then I just thought some hints of the odd color would be nice. And I am going to blend them in fairly well. So it's just one of those hints of color that you almost wonder if you're seeing it right, or if it's just the way the light is reflecting on it. Some of them you'll be able to see a little bit more than others, but again, I'm just going to try to do hints of color. So next we have the copper here, and what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to pay attention to any of the areas that I have totally missed with the white and the gold, the silver and the gold and the ice white gold. And I'm just filling in those areas so that all of the areas of those pipes are done. And in my opinion, you can definitely see the metallics better on the black than on the white. And then even on the Kraft. The Kraft, they kind of blend in with that background a little bit. I think this pipework background would be great for masculine cards. And also if you happen to know someone or have a family member that is a plumber, I think this would be a really cool card for them. And even if you just love the industrial steampunk type look, it's hard enough to find masculine things and ways to make masculine cards sometimes. So this is a great way to do it. So next I'm going in with that peppermint green, and I'm just adding just really light touches. And while I'm working on it, you really probably can't see a lot of the color that I'm using. It's very, very light. I just want a hint of those colors. So as I'm doing it, you're not even really able to see a whole lot of the green. It's going on top of the other metallic colors. And when you're using these waxes, when you go on top of another color, they are opaque. So you will see a little bit of that color, but it does blend in a little bit. The heat from your fingers kind of warms that wax, so it kind of blends the two colors in. Next, I am using the teal color, and once again, going in some areas. I am a little bit heavier with this one, especially on that white, than I was with the peppermint green. So you can see a little bit more, especially that first area that I put it with the white. But once again, just adding it in different areas. Then I'm going in with the marine blue and just putting some highlights. And I really love the look of it with those colors on there. I think it looks a little bit more interesting, just a little bit different. So once I have all of these colors together, have all of these colors on the background, I can trim these pieces down and assemble them into cards. Now I'm going to just make A2 cards with them. So they're going to be 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. Now you could easily have stopped these backgrounds with just those metallic colors and not added the different colors to them. They would look absolutely fantastic with them as well. Really, I just wanted to use all of the colors, and I thought this was a great way to do it, and something just a little bit different. Because of the variety of colors, I think you can use them with many, many different things. You can use them with greenery, you can use them with florals. Here, obviously, I'm using them with a little bit more of an industrial look, but I love the fact that there are a nice array of colors, so they lend themselves well to many different uses. So lastly here, I'm going in with that pink peony, and if at any point any of these colors are a little bit too dark and I wanted to mute them a little bit, I could go back in with some of the metallic colors that I used at the beginning and just cover them just a little bit, just to tone them down a little bit more, but I really quite like how they're looking. I will be using these backgrounds as a whole, but I think it would also be really fun to do a little bit of fussy cutting around them and do kind of a partial background with just a little bit of the pipework showing. I think it could be an interesting and unique look as well. But I wanted to just play around with these inks for this video and not get a little bit too complicated with some fussy cutting. So once I have these backgrounds done here, and I am done them, I will continue on with creating the cards. So right off the bat, I have a personal favorite. And again, I'm just curious if it is yours. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'm curious if you guys have a personal favorite of which background you think the wax paste show up better on or look better on. And really, that's just one of those personal preference things. It's not a right or wrong answer. Everyone has their own personal preference. So I'm going to trim my backgrounds down, and I'm going to trim the embossed and wax backgrounds to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. And then I'm also going to trim a piece of cardstock down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. So just like I like to do with when I'm using interference inks, I like to use those inks to color my mats to make sure that my mats match my project perfectly. So I'm going to do the same thing with these cards. I'm taking my mats and I'm going to use those wax pastes, and I'm going to use them on the edge of those mats so that those wax or those mats match the colors from inside my embossed piece perfectly. So I'm going to use 3 different colors just for 3 different looks here. I'm going to use the rich purple on the black mat, and I thought that black mat worked perfect with that rich purple on there to show off that color the same as it's being shown off on the inside of, or on the embossed part of that black mat there. And I'm going to use a white mat with the peppermint green color for behind my Kraft piece, and then I'm just using a white mat with silver for behind my white piece. Now, while I'm putting that wax on the edge or on the mats, I did notice that the wax starts to build up on the edge of that cardstock. So I do go in and I use my finger to wipe that off, to clean that off. I want to make sure I'm not transferring that wax anywhere. And the other thing that I'm doing is between colors, not only am I cleaning my fingers, but I'm also cleaning my desktop off. Now, once I was done, I did find that I thought this peppermint green was a little bit too light to go behind that Kraft one. So I do wish I had chosen either a darker color or done it on Kraft cardstock. I think that might have made it show up a little bit better and a little bit more closely to how it looks on the Kraft cardstock. When I go to do my sentiments, I'm using the same colors to do the mats on my sentiments as well. So it does tie this green in a little bit better, but I did find that this color on top of a white card base behind that Kraft, it kind of lost a lot of the color until you tilt it in the light and see it. So with that background done, I can do that ink blending on my background for my white embossed piece. So this one I'm using the silver and doing the exact same process for putting that wax on the edge of the cardstock. Now you could do more than just the edge, but the edge is the only part that's going to be seen. So there's really not much point in doing much more than that. You could also use just a solid piece of cardstock as well, but I really love the look of the luster of that wax and the color as a mat behind my embossed piece. I just think it ties it in really, really well. For my sentiments for these cards, I'm going to use some of the extra large dies from Lisa Horton Crafts. So I'm using one from the Wedding Day set, one from Best Wishes and Thanks, and one from So Awesome. So I've used these sentiment die sets several times in cards, and I like the nice big font that they have, as well as the fact that they have a shadow. So for my white card, I have both of those pieces die cut out of white. For the black, I have both of them die cut out of black. And then for the Kraft background, I have the shadow die cut out of white and the upper part cut out of Kraft cardstock. And I'm going to do the ink blending same as I did for the matte with that Kraft one. So it's going to tie those two in together, but I still have the Kraft letters on top of it. So I think it looks nice with the two of them together. For the black one, I have a congrats sentiment, and I just use that same purple to do the waxing on the back. And I do let them sit for a few minutes. When you're using them, the wax starts to melt or whatever from the heat of your fingers. So I do let that sit and kind of set a little bit before I glue anything on top of there. And even with that wax on top of there, I was wondering how my layers would glue together, and they glue together just fine. I do the same process that I do with all of my cardstock and all of my sentiments. I will layer them together, and then I'll put my acrylic block on top of there just to hold everything nice and flat while it's drying or while I'm doing something else. And I didn't feel that I needed or find that I needed to use or leave it any more time than I normally do with just regular cardstock. So the waxing or the adding wax to the shadow for the sentiments was very similar or the same as doing it for the mats for the cards. I did cover the entire background just so that any area that shadow was exposed would be visible. Then I'm going to put the glue on the upper part. I will layer those together, and because of the liquid glue, I do have a few seconds to shimmy and move things in place. Then I can put my acrylic block on there and let that glue start to set. Same process with the other sentiments. Now this sew is really quite large, so you could even leave that sew part off and just have awesome. Sometimes I don't want to cover up much of the background if there is an image that I think it's going to impact the image by covering it, but because these are more industrial look and you really get a feel for them for the rest of the background, I didn't find that I was covering too much by having that sew as well as the awesome. Going to do the same thing with that congrats. And I love the fact that even though I'm using the same or very similar products, we're getting very different looks simply because of that colored cardstock background behind those wax pastes. So I love trying things like this out and seeing what the differences and similarities and how different it's going to look. So you can see that that congrats sentiment on top of that black background ties it, or it blends in a little bit more than the so awesome and the thanks. Those ones kind of pop off of the background a little bit more. So I'm going to do my white card as well as my black card as vertical ones, and then the Kraft one I'm going to do as a horizontal card. So I just turned that a quarter turn, and this is a non-directional pattern, this embossed background, so you can easily do that. You don't have to worry about it being put on your card in a certain direction. It'll look great either way. Once I have those glued down, I'm just going to put that acrylic block on there. Because this is an embossed background, I want to make sure that that glue has good contact with my embossed background. So after letting the other ones or gluing the other ones down, I've decided that I didn't like that black on top of the rich purple matte. It didn't pop off of it enough, so I went and I die cut another congrats sentiment, use that silver on top of it, and I will put that on top of my black die cut, and you can see right off the bat that it pops a little bit more. You can see that congrats just a little bit better than the black on top of the purple. In person, when you're looking at just the sentiment, you can see it, but especially on camera, it just kind of ties in or kind of blends in too much, and you don't really see the letters as well. By doing this, I'm also adding a little bit of extra dimension to that sentiment, and I really love the look of that extra dimension on there. Now that that is done, I can glue that to the background of my card, and we have 3 cards done in a very quick time. It really doesn't take much longer to do 3 than it does to do 1, but again, 3 different backgrounds. And if you look really closely, you can see that I got wax paste on my background, but it's fairly light, and I think unless you're looking for that and looking for perfection, in my opinion, it doesn't impact anything negatively. But that's my opinion. Then we have our So Awesome card on the Kraft background. This one, like I said before, I did as a horizontal just for something a little bit different. I typically will do vertical cards. I prefer them a little bit more. I'm not really sure why, but I tend to just lean towards that. And then we have our white background here. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really had fun playing with these wax pastes as well as this Pipework embossing folder. Again, I think it'd be fantastic for masculine cards, and I can't wait to create some more with those wax pastes and play with them a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Have a fantastic day.